Usually people confuse personal branding with networking, which just happened at the tea session before. But I would like to say that personal branding precedes networking. You need to have a personal brand so that your networking process is more effective. Let me start with something very relatable because most people don't even understand the concept of personal brand. They think it's boasting. It's not boasting at all. There's something else actually. In fact, calling it boasting is a failure of imagination. Let me start with something very relatable, and I will take you through personal brand from 4 aspects. Why, what, how, and who. Those are the 4 things that I can cover within the time limit that I have today. So let me start with why. Is any of you considering buying a new cell phone or a smartphone this year? Most of you? Yes, because we like to change it almost every year these days. People who are on the Apple ecosystem, they don't even need to think. It's 14, 15, 16, 17, that's about it, nothing else. For Android, it's a big problem. India made, Chinese made, which screen, which battery, which blah, blah, etc. But how do you go about making a short list for which phone you want to buy? What do you do for a short list? Search, yes, online of course, because offline search is very difficult. It's too time consuming. Search. And then you go to various online websites of various phones or ask friends on Twitter. You post an open question on Twitter or LinkedIn. Somebody says this. Half a dozen people say, don't, that's not right, say this, etc., etc. But within about 15, 20 minutes, you can easily make a first shortlist so that then you can actually go to the actual product websites and see the details and do that. Your personal brand is exactly like how people search for a phone. People name search each other online. And they might shortlist you or not shortlist you. And the shortlist is not buying into you. It's just to remember you slightly better than having a static CV on LinkedIn or not having anything interesting on Twitter or on Instagram, which you might all be in than on LinkedIn and Twitter, by the way. That's what usually happens. So people name search each other. And when name search happens on Google, which is where people name search each other, LinkedIn gets top priority, then Twitter, then Instagram, then Facebook. So what you leave in terms of a digital footprint on those places really matters. Is it functional? Say, I'm working here, I worked here, I worked here, I studied here. That's a CV. Is it interesting? That's when things can actually be quite dramatically different because it will make people who are searching you shortlist you in their memory. If it's functional, no shortlist. If it's interesting, it will be shortlisted for memory for later retrieval. That's what usually happens. Now, second part, what is personal brand? I just explained why. What is personal brand? It's just your reputation that you build for yourself beyond your name, designation, and employer. That's where most people stop. Name, designation, employer. Let me just give you a very simple example. If you check most LinkedIn profiles, under the DP, which is the display picture, what are the 2 things that you notice? Name, designation, dash, employer. That's about it. That's a failure of imagination. There are many people who don't have that, who have something really interesting. There is a question being asked under the photograph, which will make you remember that person 10 times more than any other person with a name and a designation and a company name. Most people think beyond that at all. I'll just give you a personal example where I gained from this. I joined Instagram very late, kicking and screaming, because I'm not a visual first person. I'm an old world text first person. I like to craft sentences in my mind. So I joined Instagram with great difficulty because it forces me to put a picture for the heck of it and then write. My son complains, he's 19, he complains saying, why are you doing entire blog posts on Instagram after one photograph? But that's his perspective, totally understand that. So I joined Instagram very late, probably in 2020 or so. And then after I joined, I got one of the larger clients, a corporate workshop for several leaders in that company. After that went on very, very well. The CEO took me aside and said, Karthik, do you know how I reached you? So I said, you must have heard about me or read my blog post or connected with me on LinkedIn or your HR head would have connected me on LinkedIn. No. It seems her 16-year-old daughter follows me on Instagram because of my gardening-related posts. And then occasionally I write about personal branding. So this was a dinner time conversation between the daughter and the mother. Is that this person that I follow him for his flowers and gardening-related posts also talks a lot about personal branding. Have you done something like that in your organization? She said, no. One thing led to another. That is reputation beyond name, designation, and employer. You can craft it yourself if you just think about it harder and not look at monkey see and monkey do. Everybody has photo, name, company, designation. I should also have that. Who framed the rules? Nobody. You can change the rules easily. Now, this is the most important part. This is part of the what of personal branding. I look at personal branding from 3 layers. The first layer is the people who live with us and people who are personal friends with us. This is family and friends beyond work. We know them reasonably well and we communicate with them very, very often. You don't need a personal brand for them. You just live, they understand who you are. That's about it. The second layer is a combination of colleagues from work and industry peers, like the ones that you meet here, they're industry peers, not direct colleagues. Of course, you've got colleagues also here. That's the second one. They know you to the extent you reveal yourself. You still spend about 10 to 12 hours with them every day, every work day. But industry peers, you don't spend time at all. You spend time in events like this, occasionally. So there is infrequent communication, but there is fairly high familiarity generally. That's there. The layer 3 is the most important one. This is the rest of the world, which includes media, journalists, people who may look up to you, people who you look up to, and potential clients, employees, partner, vendors, colleagues, everybody put together. Your personal branding effort is not for layer 1, where you just need to live, that's it. It's for half of layer 2 and all of layer 3. Because you don't communicate with these people often at all, this is a passive way of communicating who you are and articulate your feelings and sentiments to that layer. That's where personal branding works. I'll give you another way to look at the same thing. Imagine a house with 100 windows. I know there is limited privacy in a house with 100 windows, but just imagine. And this is a very approximate photo of a house with 100 windows because I couldn't find a large enough house with 100 windows actually. But there are a lot of windows, and if you're going to have a bath, there's going to be a big problem. I understand that. But this is a house with 100 windows. If you open all 100 windows and continue living your life, how would the world perceive you? They can see you walking through all 100 windows, right? Every time you move through one window to another window to another window, they can look at you, the public that is outside. They can keep looking at you and form opinions outside of every single window that you pass through. If you shut 95 windows and choose only 5 windows open, and you move through those windows, how will the world perceive you? Only when you move through those windows, they will perceive you. But there are people living with you inside the house, for whom the windows don't matter at all. They are looking at you inside the house, no windows at all. That's layer 1. But when you shut 95 windows and open only 5 strategically thought through windows and move through those windows, that's for half of layer 2, which is industry colleagues and peers, and all of layer 3. Because they don't have any other access to who you are as an individual at all. What is your personality? What is your attitude towards various things? But it's a conscious decision to pick and choose which windows to shut and which windows to open. It's your choice, of course. You can choose what not to say on LinkedIn. People can ask you saying, what is your opinion about that? You can completely not answer that at all. Because you have consciously chosen not to have a point of view on that topic, which you would have with your spouse or your father or your parents. But that's happening personally, face to face, not on digital spaces with strangers. The main point about digital media is it is a world full of strangers. For strangers, you don't owe them anything at all. You pick and choose your personality, parts of your personality to showcase. Do that as often as possible. That's your brand. That's your personal brand. As simple as that. The second aspect most people get wrong about personal branding, and even social media in general, they are under the impression. In fact, it was this actress Ana de Armas who recently said, I'm on Instagram because my marketing team said I need to be, but I'm not very interested. It forces me to share my personal feelings. Who said Instagram forces you to share your personal feelings? Is it in the rules? Of course not. Even if it's in the rules, we're not going to follow the rules, right? Who said? Nobody said you need to share your personal sentiments and feelings on Twitter and Instagram at all. Don't do that. Because when you're on social media, You're all alone in your room, of course in your bedroom. You just see a dark room and your phone, and then you're chatting something, you're posting something on Twitter. But just imagine it's not you alone in your room. You are on stage with the limelight on you. How would you behave? Turn the whole thing around. Social media, being active on social media is not you sitting there talking to your neighbor. It is you here with the limelight talking to a large audience, potential audience, of course, because you could say that I've got 100 followers on Twitter. What audience are you talking about? It's potential audience. Always remember, things can travel. It's you on the stage with the limelight on you. That should be your approach to anything you say online. Don't just blurt out anything impulsively or instinctively. That's for your people that live with you and work with you. Offline, face-to-face, not online. Online, it's carefully curated performance. Now, when I say performance, people are slightly annoyed, basically saying, are you saying I need to act online? I can't act online. I'm just me. I need to be authentic, right? But that authenticity is not 100% authenticity. It is still a snapshot of you. It's the real you. But it's just 5 windows you open. Remember, right? Those 5 windows are authentic you only. But it is exaggerated because you're on stage. You are conscious about 1,000 eyes on you. So however authentic you are, it needs to be taken in that context. The other problem that comes here is, yeah, I share things online, but see, we are Indians. And for us, the holiest book is Bhagavad Gita. It says, do your duty, don't talk about yourself. Your mom will talk about yourself. You don't talk about yourself, because that's vain, right? People should talk about my work. I should not talk about my work myself, right? That doesn't work like that at all. You need to talk about your work. I'll give you a very simple example. If you go to Zomato, and then you decide that I want to try a new restaurant. There's a new restaurant called Roxy on Sarjapur Road where I live. And if I need to decide I need to go to that place or not, I will go to Zomato and look up the reviews. I see the reviews. Tons of people have said this, that, good, bad, etc. Almost all the reviews that you notice on Zomato and Swiggy recently, you will notice many people mentioning the name of the waiter that served them. Said, Aman served me very well. Firoz did a wonderful job. Please ask for him. People name servers and waiters. Do you think it happens organically? Do you go around asking, hey, what's your name? I want to talk to you, about your name on Zomato. Do you do that? Nobody does that. So how do those names land up on Zomato reviews? They ask, because they understand there is an opportunity here. They have cards printed for them separately. They give the card saying, sir, if you had a great experience, please leave a review on Zomato. This is my name. Uber drivers do that. Zomato delivery people do that. Hotel staff do that these days. It's not against Bhagavad Gita at all. They are just creating an opportunity for themselves. Another fantastic example I'll give you. We have 2 balconies, one in the living room, one in the bedroom. And we have a persistent pigeon problem. You all have pigeon problem, I'm sure. I mean, I'm totally okay with pigeons. They're very cute, very nice, even though they call it rats with wings. But let's pause that problem for now. But they're generally cute and quite nice. But they shit in the balcony. So I don't want that, and it's not supposed to be very healthy when you've got kids around. So we tried everything. People said hang CDs. I mean, who has CDs these days? My Mac doesn't even have a CD drive. Hang CDs, that shiny light will repel pigeons, it seems. They sat on the CD and shat on the balcony. So people said, you need to put a net. There is no other opportunity. There is a connection to personal branding here. Wait for it. So I've got a pigeon net vendor for the balcony. He did a very good job. While my daughter commented, it looks like we are inside the cage and pigeons are flying freely now, which is very true, actually. All happened. And then finally he said, job done, sir. He did a wonderful job. And he said, he said, how did you find me, sir? I said, I did a Google search, pigeon net vendors near me. They said, okay, fine, but you must have seen 3 or 4 names. Why did you choose me? He said, you had the maximum reviews and 5 stars. He said, I asked people to leave reviews, sir. Can you also please leave a nice review? He has gamed his Google lead generation method. A pigeon net vendor who can barely speak English. He understands the value of positive reviews and asks for it. He doesn't say that I'm a great pigeon net vendor. He does a good job, and then ask for it. That's a good imagination when it comes to personal branding. You don't need to necessarily talk about yourself. You can talk about your ongoing work that's going on. Another interesting fact here. If you're very young, you don't have any achievements, you're probably just 2 to 3 years experience, and you'll say, what the hell can I talk about? I'm just working on something very low level, I'm not very sure, confident at all. Talk about your curiosity in various things that affect your work. This is very relevant for people in college, students in college. They don't have work experience to talk about, but they can constantly talk about curiosity. Think about it. If you are in an MBA and you are interested in product management in FMCG space, you don't have any experience, you are an MBA student, what can you talk about? You talk about your ongoing curiosity about products being managed in various FMCG companies. Open any newspaper, there is always some news about FMCG companies, FMCG products, FMCG product management. Talk about it often. How did it help? When you go for an interview, there'll be 100 people, 99 would have a static profile on LinkedIn saying engineering, MBA, MBA. You would have engineering, MBA, MBA with a bank of 100 posts showcasing your ongoing interest in product management. You would stand out instantly. And it's in your control. If you're young, talk about your curiosity. That really helps. As I said, personal branding is not about talking about yourself. That's a failure of imagination. Go beyond that, talk about things that interest you. And here, as I said, in the 5 windows that you open, ensure that 3 are professional related and at least 2 are personal interest based. Now you would be wondering, why should you reveal your personal interest? For instance, you could be collecting stamps, which have become completely outdated now. But you could be collecting. And you could have decided that I don't want to talk about my stamp collecting philately interest online at all. Perfectly fine, don't talk about it. But find something of non-work interest areas and talk about them as often as possible. I talk about parenting, gardening, fitness, running. I do that very, very often. And quite a few people talk about photography, fitness, running, books that they read, and etc. And it really matters. Why should you do that? Because even if the professional context is not relatable to a large audience, the personal context will immediately make you relatable to a much larger audience. They would remember you of saying, a very senior person in Target does something, but very, very passionate about bird photography. That's the connection. Even kids could relate to that. That's the connection. So they would not understand what you do in the company, but they would relate to you as a human being because you've got personal interests that relates to even a 16-year-old child. That's what really matters. The third part is how. And this is something that I do professionally for my clients over 8 weeks actually. But I need to crunch it into a much shorter version for this time duration, of course. There are only 3 things to understand at the very basic of how, basically. It's define, demonstrate, and defend. Those are the 3 basic elements that I explain in great detail, basically. Define is very simple. It's the equivalent of what I said of 100 windows. Pick the 5 windows. Which 5 windows do you want to open is your personal brand definition. It's not very different, actually. For instance, this phone. If the brand manager of this phone wants to sell you this phone, he would show the phone, of course, and say, great battery, fantastic screen size, and you would get software updates for 3 years. Those are the 3 things you mentioned. You would say, that's it, those 3 things only. No, he said, there are 100 more. You can go to the website and see all that. But he picks and chooses 3 top things which is most relevant to the target audience that he or she is talking to. That's brand definition. So you as an individual has hundreds of attributes because you're a person. You have a lot of interest, attitude, attributes, everything is there. But you need to define the most important ones that you want to showcase to the world when you're on the stage with the limelight on you. What are those 3, 4, 5 things that you want to showcase? You just need to talk about it as often as possible. That's brand definition. That's first one. The next one is demonstrate, which is even more easier actually, because in define, you create your own content. You write yourself, this is what I think about what's happening in my industry, blah, 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 etc. And demonstrate is far easier. Other people would have written about your industry with great detail. You just need to jump into it, into a conversation, either a quote tweet or a quote post or a comment below. You are actually demonstrating your interest through somebody else's stepping stone. You're using that as a stepping stone. That's demonstrate. The third one is slightly difficult for most people. It's defend. This is about a clash of opinions. When somebody takes a position saying, I agree with what's happening in industry with regard to XYZ, then you need to take a position saying, I agree partly, but this I don't agree with. This is actually the most useful one, because this is where you are zigging when everybody is zagging. It's very easy to zag and very difficult to zig. I'll give you an example. When the Maggi crisis happened in India, the Maggi with lead and everything, there was so much hoo-ha in India because Maggi is such a beloved brand and beloved food. Everybody was talking about it. A lot of marketing people were giving their gyan and opinion about this, what's happened. I also did that because I have a blog which I talk about that. I wrote a lot about Maggi in a very fairly harsh manner, saying you should not have done that. For instance, they were doing this social media engagement exercise in response to the crisis, where anybody and everybody who uses the word Maggi in their tweet or their post, they immediately respond with a very legal sounding jargon saying, we do not have lead in Maggi, you can safely consume Maggi for the rest of your life, blah, blah, etc. It's a very standard same statement. So I took a stand saying, don't do that. It's very boring, it's not human at all, you need to think through this and etc. Years later, about 5 or 6 years later, when I met the senior Maggi team, marketing team, I was quite scared, saying they're going to be very angry with me. But they actually said, you're one of the few people who actually sounded helpful even while trying to castigate us. Because you actually pointed out the problem, but you also said, this is how you should actually handle it. That was very useful, thank you. So you can actually defend while being completely respectful and decent. You don't need to be angry at all when you're trying to defend your point of view at all. That's the third part, which is very easy, of course. The last part is the most important. 80% of success is showing up. This is a famous quote by somebody very famous. I'm not sure who it is, but it's a very famous quote. I didn't make this up. But it's showing up. Imagine, you sign up for a gym at the beginning of the year in January, like everybody else does, because you pay for the entire year and guilt trip you saying, at least I paid my money, so I'll keep going there. But you need to go there every day, right? You need to show up every day. Personal branding is exactly like that. You need to show up as often as possible online on the channels that are appropriate for you. You need to do that. If you don't do that, it won't work at all. So think of it like Economic Times is asking you a comment once a week. Think about it yourself. No Economic Times is asking you for a comment at all. But if they ask you for a comment on an industry topic, what would you say? Post that on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter, whichever platform is appropriate. You post it as often as possible. I usually suggest keep this as a calendar entry in your calendars. If you don't have it as an entry, it won't happen. This is the equivalent of having an alarm in the morning to wake up to have a run in the morning first thing first. The equivalent is having a calendar. Show up as often as possible online. Because you're professionals, showing up on LinkedIn works really, really well. Because LinkedIn is probably the most underrated channel of all channels compared to Twitter, Instagram, and etc. Instagram is equally useful, but the audience queue is much younger on Instagram, and people generally don't talk very serious topics on Instagram. It's usually more fun, light, personal. LinkedIn, anything goes. I'll give you a very interesting example of a radio jockey from Bombay. He used to share his interviews with celebrities that he taken. I mean, interview with Karan Johar, interview with Salman Khan on LinkedIn. And people pounced on him in the comments saying, what nonsense, you're pushing LinkedIn towards Facebook zone and Instagram and YouTube zone. Don't share all this nonsense here. I didn't join LinkedIn to listen to your interview with Karan Johar. He shut everybody up with a fantastic logic. He said, I am talking to my target audience, which is event managers and admin heads of large companies, because I want a gig as an MC in their company. Those people are active on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram from a very different frame of mind. But on LinkedIn, they are active from which next MC can I pick? Occasionally that comes a reason. Which MC can I pick next for my company event? And there, they are looking at spontaneity, how this person speaks, and etc. So I keep getting gigs from corporates. That's why I post it here. Finished. It works for you, works for you. That's it. You can completely say, I don't care about what you think at all. In fact, I remember even, this is in 2015 or 2016, there's a CEO, there's a lady CEO of a lingerie company from UK. She started posting what we now belatedly call racy photographs of brochures of her products on LinkedIn. And people said, this is I mean, this is not done. You can't post this thing on LinkedIn because I can't open LinkedIn in my workplace. That's their problem. She says, I am the CEO of this bloody company. This is my brochure I'm sharing. What else do you expect to say? This is my product. What else can I do? What works for you, what works. There are no rules for LinkedIn at all, remember, completely. You make up the rules. And this is my personal favorite because it's so relatable and I personally believe it totally. Your personal brand is exactly like how you manage your personal health. And I have 10 reasons for it, not just one. I'll give you all 10 reasons, then you will realize, okay, this guy is not faffing at all. He's really true. The first reason, there are only two things that matter to both personal health and personal branding. What goes in and what goes out. With personal health, what you eat, how you pick and eat is what matters. And then what goes out, how you burn it, that's what matters. With personal brand, exactly same. What you read, how much you read, how useful you read, that's what matters. And then how much you articulate online, that's what really matters. Those are the two things that really matter. If you keep on with the endless scroll of Instagram, scroll, and then after half an hour you said, what the hell, I wasted my last 30 minutes doing nothing, and just keep on scrolling. It's a pointless waste of time. So you need to build pipelines to read more productively and usefully, which affects your 5 windows that you're open, those topics. Read more on that. I have a thumb rule saying read 10x more than you share. When you read more, automatically you would be able to connect the dots and form an opinion. If you don't read as much or if you don't consume as much, you won't be able to connect the dots because you can't even see the dots in the first place. To see the dots, you need to read, you need to consume more content. That's number one. Number two, you need a plan for both health and personal branding. You can't just start something on your own. Personal health, you ask somebody, right? You ask a coach saying, what do I do? These are the things that I want. And the personal health coach can tell you saying, these are the things you need to do. Eat this, don't eat that, run, do this, that, etc. You need a plan for this also. You don't necessarily need a coach. You can actually wing your way through, but you still need a plan because you need to start with a goal and then you need a plan. The third one, you cannot outsource the heavy lifting at all. Personal health, you can pay the gym, but you can't get somebody else to run for you in the gym or do the exercise for you. You need to do it yourself. You can't outsource it. Exactly same with personal branding also. There are CEOs who outsource the work to a corpcom team or a team and etc. But that's not the actual work. The thought still comes from them. The articulation is either through ChatGPT or a team person. It's only the articulation. The thought is still there. So they are still thought leaders. The articulation is very different. But you still have to bring the thought. Only then you will be seen as a thought leader. Otherwise you won't be able to. Fourth one, the glamour of the winners. When it comes to personal health, we look at people who are abnormally fit with fantastic abs and all that stuff. And we say, why can't I be like that? That doesn't work like that, right? You need to look at the normal people who are hitting the gym and seek inspiration, saying, that person looks like me and she goes to gym every day, I also need to hit the gym. Or she runs every day, I also need to run every day. That's the inspiration you need to look at, not the superstars of the genre, just normal people like you and me. So don't look at the winners alone, look at people who are struggling, people who are doing just like you. Fifth one, results take time. Personal health, you know results take time. If you join a gym or start running in January, by Jan end, if you start looking at your tummy, nothing would have changed. But by October, if you're still running every day, people would notice the change and tell you something has changed. Yes, of course. Both are a habit. They are not an overnight affair. You need to be at it, show up every day, as I said again and again. As I said earlier, seventh one is people notice a change. Even before you notice a change, people will tell you there's a change. If you're active online, you write very often. When you come to an event like this, people who you have no clue they existed will come and say, hey, that last post on LinkedIn that you did was very interesting. And you say, oh, this person read my post. That's when you will realize the equivalent of saying, hey, you lost weight. The equivalent of that is this, or you gained weight, whichever you want to pick, basically. The eighth one, this is a constant back of the mind obsession. If you are a runner, you will know that. I run 5 kilometers every day, so I know I'm talking about something very relevant that I relate to. If you're a runner, in the back of your mind, even when you're working, you would think saying, which podcast should I listen to tomorrow when I'm running? Or next week, which audiobook should I listen to while I'm running? Or is there a better shoe that I can pick? Or is there a better t-shirt that I can buy? Better shorts that I can buy? Is there a new route that I can try for my cycling? It's all happening in the back of your mind. Not front, back. You keep thinking about it. Personal brand is exactly like that. It's an obsession. there's a new post that somebody has posted, I don't agree with it at all, I need to say something in response. Happens. You would think that's not a very healthy obsession at all, but it's perfectly healthy. If it is in service of your personal brand and you have thought through it as a plan. Ninth one, there are good days, there are great days and bad days. If you're a runner, you know this very well. Some days you can't even wake up in the morning. Some days you just jump straight from the bed to the road. You just keep running. And it happens. We are just humans, of course. Great days, good days, bad days. Similarly, with your personal brand. Some post that you have taken 2 months to write and post it on LinkedIn, it got 2 likes. But something you didn't even think, you took a photo and shared it on LinkedIn, it got 2,000 likes. And you're wondering, is there a magic here at all? Why is this happening? But don't go by the likes. The likes, if you go by the comments, likes and etc., you would game your own personal brand. You're not there to game your personal brand. You are there to build a perception about yourself. Don't go by likes, go by your internal audience. Do you gain anything? Do you value anything at all when you're sharing something? Do you gain something? Others would gain something at all. Always remember, the internet is not full of people who write things. 90% of the internet is people who are lurking silently. They are not sharing anything at all. They are just reading. That is the audience you need to target. When you get comments, likes, all that stuff, that's happening from the 10%, which is a minuscule from the overall internet part. The silent majority is what matters to you. They won't even let you know that you have liked your post. So you can check the impressions, of course, but even those are actually not 100% true, but that usually works. Twitter and LinkedIn are the only two platforms that give you impressions of posts. How many people have read the post without leaving a single response? That happens basically. And the last one, this is one of my favorites. If you don't enjoy what you do, you won't do it at all. You need to enjoy both. You are working on your personal health and working on your personal brand. You need to do that. There is no other option. If you don't enjoy, you would stop doing it. You can't force yourself to do it every day. Enjoy it, it works. With running, it's very easy. After I finish my 5-kilometer run, I get big rush in my head, which is an adrenaline rush, unlike anything in the whole day. And I run in the evenings. And I come back and I'm tired, I'm sweating, but it feels exhilarating. And I run for that high every day. It's obviously called a runner's high. It's fantastic. It's the best, healthiest way to get a high. So please do that, apart from your personal branding also. I know I'm actually sounding more like a personal health coach than a personal branding coach, but both are exactly same. Now let me come to the what part of it. Women to look up to, and these are the women that I look up to quite often. Just 5 people, 5 or 6, I don't know, but 5 people, I talk about them basically. First one, Radhika Gupta. She should be in your next Target Elevate. She was there in the past itself, I'm sure. Yeah, you told me that. She's a thorough inspiration. You need to look up her profile and then you learn. And this was actually her YouTube video, The Girl with the Broken Neck. Every time I look at her, every time I see her video, plain inspiration. And she just carries herself so well. You have to follow her on both LinkedIn and Twitter. And she has a point of view on many things. Things that she doesn't disagree with many things also. Of course, you can ask saying, but she hasn't spoken about that topic, this topic. But that's where the 5 windows comes in. She has consciously chosen which windows to open in her life, and that's what she is doing persistently. Shows up as often as possible online. She's a must follow instantly, number 1. Number 2 is an extreme opposite. Vaidehi Murthy. How many people follow Vaidehi here? Not many. I would say go to Twitter and follow her. She's the most interesting character you can follow on Twitter, not on LinkedIn. So if you go to LinkedIn and check up Vaidehi Murthy, you would realize that she works for Dunzo in the social media team. But if you follow her on Twitter, she doesn't talk about Bangalore weather like the rest of us. She talks about only one thing, puns, and more puns. It just keeps coming fast and thick, at least about 5 or 10 puns every single day. And you'd be wondering, how does this person think? She comes up with weird puns, very interesting puns. She says, who called it seatbelt and not Raksha Bandhan? Many car companies use this year after year for Raksha Bandhan again and again. How does no one have a problem with Madame Tussauds objectifying people? Don't let your jacket get spiteful, it turns into a petticoat. It's just puns. I mean, some you may like, some you don't like, some you think it's very corny, some you think it's brilliant. She does this very often. And brilliant. Only puns, very focused. She wants to be the world's best punster. If you follow her, you would know what I mean. That's why they motivate you. Her handle itself is a pun. But why? But VAI. That's but why. Third one is Sairi Chahal. She is a businesswoman. She is a founder of Sheroes, which is the gender opposite of heroes, basically. She actually nurtures women-led companies. She should probably be in your next target elevate. Very appropriate as a person. She has a point of view on business-related topics very, very, very often. And she is very candid in offering her views also. She is a must follow from a woman perspective because she is very, very good at that, what she does. The fourth one is Subhashini, the most interesting person amongst this list apart from Bhatwai. She's a homemaker or a housewife as we call it earlier. Now homemaker is more appropriate as a word to use. Subhashini is a homemaker in Bangalore. She started doing something very interesting a few years ago. She has a garden in Bangalore in a home, and she used to pick leaves and twigs and flowers and etc., put it in a blank piece of paper and draw an art around it. And you think, what nonsense is this? Like a kid's work, what shit is? And she's been doing it for about a decade now. She has published a book on something called garden art. She owns #garden art. If you look at that Marge Simpson one, that's actually a flower which is very commonly available in South India. It dries up and it becomes a flower like that. She just looked at that and said, this looks like Marge's hairstyle. And I will convert it into Marge. She does it. Brands now ask her saying, hey, what are you planning to do for Independence Day? Can you do something branded for us with your garden and your art? Call it garden art. See, Subhashini, Bangalore-based homemaker. And she owns garden art. Very interesting person to follow. The last one is Vani Kola. I think there is one more, if I remember right. Yeah, last one is Vani Kola. She is an investor and a VC. A very rare woman VC who is very vocal on a lot of topics. I'm actually working with one of the VC firms, and they are acutely aware that they are short of women VCs. Everyone is a man across the building. So she is very, very rare from that point of view. And she is quite vocal in many of the topics that she takes up as a topic, basically. She also tries to game the LinkedIn and Twitter content by posting something very, very popular in terms of video and etc. But that happens only infrequently. She has a point of view on many things. That really helps, basically. And that's about it. I have about 4 minutes for questions because I'm sure somebody would have a question on personal brand, and I can also foresee what question would come, but I would let you ask my questions. Please feel free to ask any question. Anybody? Yes, please, go ahead. Good question. I anticipate this question. Where do you draw the line in terms of organic growth or buying followers and etc.? These days, you can buy a verified profile on Twitter. Meta just announced you can buy a verified profile on Facebook and Meta platforms and etc. But those are not about followers. Those are about just you being who and official verified you. They're not about followers at all. So one thing, you can't buy followers at all. You can buy followers, but all those followers will be bought from some weird country. So they're not actually followers. You need to build your organic personality only, but don't focus on the followers. Focus on what you have to offer, what you have to learn. Talk about it more often, followers will happen automatically. To put it slightly differently, I'll give you an example. I met Jaspreet for the first time face-to-face today morning because he was the first speaker. And he said, I looked you up because your name was on the agenda, I looked you up. That looked you up could be 2 seconds if I have a static profile. But it was more because I had something interesting to talk about myself across my profiles. So he looked me up hopefully for slightly more than 2 seconds because it was interesting. So it's not about followers who follow you for a long time. It's about somebody looking up you for the first time because your name happened to be somewhere or you were in some event, and then they stuck onto you saying, okay, this person does something interesting. So let me put it this way. If you want to go to a movie, how do you decide which movie to go to? You would see the trailer. These days, that's the easiest way to see the trailer, or you would see IMDb reviews and ratings, then see the trailer, then go to the movie. If you want to read a book, how do you decide which book to buy? You would ask friends, some recommendation, etc. Or if you pick up that book, if you're on an airport, which is probably the last place that have bookstores these days, you pick up the book, turn the book around, look at the back page of the book. If it talks to you, you buy the book. If it doesn't, it's not for me at all. What you do online consistently, forget the followers, what you do online consistently is your own personal trailer, is your own personal back cover of the book. If it's interesting, people will pick you up. It's not about the followers at all. Don't bother about the followers. Remember the NDTV story, 10 followers and 1 Barkadat. So don't bother about followers. Organic is the way to go. Any more questions? Yes.
For a very long time, I never believed in personal branding. So
Enough.
I believe like work should speak for itself, etc.
Correct.
But now I understand the power of it. But a lot of us are not very comfortable putting us out there. Or
Correct.
even sometimes it feels like you're boasting about yourself.
Correct.
And I've heard people saying you're showing off. Like,
Yep.
if you
Correct.
post anything.
True.
How do you overcome it and make it a sustainable process?
Got it. So if your content for personal brand is 100%, I would say 2% is about your work, your achievements, your experiences. Rest 98% is about the category or industry that you operate in and your point of view about that. Now, this might obviously come as a clash with the corporate communications team, which might say, these are the guidelines, you cannot talk about your rivals, you cannot talk about this and etc. But you can still talk about rivals in a very graceful, respectful tone. If you're going to agree with somebody who did a good job, you can talk about that. As I said, even if you disagree, you can do it in a very civil manner. You can still do that. But for your question, 2% is talking about yourself. That's a small content piece amongst the rest. 98% is about showcasing your ongoing interest, curiosity, and learning on various topics around you. The simplest way to do it, pick up a newspaper, find something of interest that's happening to you. Of course, first I need to ask saying, how many people even buy a newspaper in these days? Most people would say, no, they don't do that at all. Because there is InShots, there is Facebook, people share something, I get something. I would say, highly please buy at least one newspaper every day and skim through it. It is extraordinarily useful that so many talented people present what happened in the last 24 hours across multiple topics to you for such a small cost. So please do that. Time's up, of course. Any one question, one more question, last question before? Yes, please.
Hello, hi. First of all, great presentation. I benefited
Thank
a
you.
lot. And second of all, how do you find your niche? As in, you said, there could be
Decide,
so
yeah,
many.
define, yeah.
And there could be so many aspects and areas that you are interested in that you want to showcase.
Yep.
But how do you find that one thing, that you would really, really want to put out there?
It may not be one thing at all. As I said, open 6 windows, 5 windows, not just one window.
Yeah.
So pick multiple topics, but not 100 topics. Because if you talk about 100 things, there is nothing to hold on to you.
I mean, I have a follow-up question. I'm sorry
Yep,
to
yep,
interrupt.
yeah.
But, I mean, how do you draw a line of where you want to stop? So there might be 10 things, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So I do waver outside my 5 or 6 topics that I've chosen for myself, but that's occasional. If somebody looks up my profile and sees my last 10 posts, if the majority of it is in my 5 or 6 topics, that's good enough. If 1 or 2 posts are here and there, that's perfectly fine. But don't stray too much out of it, because as I said, for a phone to be sold, if I give a 100 bullet point list to somebody, they will take nothing at all with them. If I tell them 5 things, they will probably remember 3 things. That's what really matters. That's all we have time for today. Yes? One more, okay.
Karthik, my question to you is
Yes.
regarding the great slump. So
Okay.
you have this great idea, you write an amazing piece of content,
Yes.
post it online, hoping to get great engagement.
Correct.
But that doesn't happen.
Correct.
So whether you are building your own brand
Yes.
or building your company or brand's presence online,
Yes.
how do you get over the slump?
Yes. Good question. You're thinking about the slump because you're thinking about one post. It's about consistency that matters. Be consistent for 1 year or be consistent for 1 month, which completely outstrips one great post. You can probably, all of us can have only one great post on LinkedIn for our lifetime. But if you are consistent in the topic that matters to you, and you get only 25 people liking it consistently over a period, that's what really matters. Don't go for that one big high. Show up every day. That's what really matters. Only 10 people seeing it, don't bother at all. It's not the people that matter. It's what you learned, what you're sharing in terms of your experience. That's what really matters. Most people get bogged down by, I am not getting engagement. Nobody is liking me. 3 people are liking me. My colleagues are liking me. That's not the point at all. When somebody looks up your overall profile, they see 6 or 7 posts together, not your one high. So don't go for that one high. Be consistent, because you're not doing it to gather likes. You are doing this to create a perception about yourself. For that, consistency outstrips one big high any day. So please follow that, actually. Useful. Thank you so much. That's all we have time for.